Hello. It's good to see you. So today I think I'm going to start this experience of doing a 10-minute-ish talk to myself every day for until the end of 2025, and we'll see where it goes from there. And this is just going to be about whatever. It doesn't really matter, but long-term documentation of myself to look back on at some point in the future and, you know, who knows what. Discuss. Life is going to change. Life is always changing. There's always something new going on in the world and something new going on in our heads and the mind state of all the things, and everything's evolving. And so it'll be interesting to see how, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, life is going to change and I'll become different and we'll all become different. This is just the interesting nature of it. Look at all this. There's a bunch of stuff on the screen. So, yeah. What's the topic of all this? Who knows? Today, I had a surgery, and it was very interesting. The surgery, everyone's going to want to know what it's for. I'm not going to tell you what it's for, so you can guess on that all you want. But I always find the mind interesting and how the mind likes to do things, and it convinces us of certain things. And this was a surgery where I wasn't under anesthesia; it was just local anesthesia, so I was awake for the duration of it. And I started to panic. I could feel myself tensing up and a panic attack coming on within the first 10 minutes of the surgery, and then slowly it resolves, and then you just start feeling chill. At least that's what it was for me. But it's interesting because our mind does this thing where it builds up anxiety up until the moment of something happening. And then once that event is over, the mind forgets that it ever happened. Unless, of course, there's long-term effects that continue to affect you because that event isn't over yet. So, yeah, it was just interesting to watch. It's a very exciting process to see the mind. I like to watch the thoughts that happen in my head. I think everyone is interested in the thoughts in their own head. It's a lot of times what we consider who we are. So it's fascinating to see. It's like, okay, well, you can panic up until a certain situation's happening. During the surgery, it was actually kind of fun. It was cool to see the doctor, doing his work while on this body while I was awake. I'm like, wow, this is something really unique going on here. Not an everyday experience, but I could see it. As something that the mind could eventually get over. A lot of times we're afraid of the unknown. I think that's often the big things. We don't know what's going to happen. That's why the future is so scary. Making big decisions is so scary because we don't know where it's going to go. A lot of times that makes us compress into ourselves and become scared in life. And we like to huddle in our little bundle and be like, oh, this is my comfort zone. I feel safe here. I don't want to leave. And that often limits us from enjoying the things that we want to try, and we shouldn't do that. You can tell I can have a nice little cough here. Who knows what fun area I picked that up from. But, yeah. So, expansion, I think, is what I'm going to be focusing on for a little while here, and being less negative about the events that happen in life or that could be happening in life. My mind always wants to give me 100 reasons not to do something. The mind does this thing where it's like, oh, you're not good enough, or it's not going to be the way you want it to be, or it's going to mess you up somehow, it's going to cause some issues here or there. And the mind likes to stop us. And it's something to practice where we have to train ourselves to make mistakes, to realize that making a mistake isn't going to kill us. The amount of people I know that are extremely wealthy who say, I've lost everything at some point, is astounding. So making mistakes is, from what I see, a very successful way of operating. At least for some people. Sometimes you lose everything and it's not the best. I wouldn't recommend actively losing everything. But making mistakes is something that I don't hold against anyone. I think it's very important that as being human beings, we learn by seeing what works. And often in the process of seeing what works, we also find out what doesn't work, right? But if we don't try, we never get to that next step. So that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it. Trying things, getting into a state where you don't have as many negative thoughts about the things that are going to happen in life. Easier said than done. You know, the mind is very routinely built in certain ways. If you ever watch the news is extremely good at telling you to look negatively upon the world. That, you know, so many things are bad. The news likes to report on bad things. It hooks. You know, these are psychologists. These are marketers. These are people who want, you know, your views so they can sell you, you know, laundry detergent and, you know, bubblegum dispensers. Like, this is what they do. So they're going to use everything that our mind is trained to, you know, hook onto, and that's like fear and threat and all sorts of stuff, and we get stuck in this negative cycle. Like, a lot of things that you see on the news will be negative in nature, but we have to practice the opposite, right? Because we've most of us have been exposed to the news for a long time, and, you know, subconsciously have been taught to train to act that way. They don't teach us the opposite in school. No one really teaches what the mind is doing, right? So we have to do that ourselves. We have to do that ourselves and do these practices of things. But anyway, that was the fascinating experience, like with a surgery. You know, surgery is off. You know, the mind wants to be as anxious as it can, and mine was very anxious. Then you go through it, and then you forget about it afterwards, and then that's what we do. You know, I've had so many surgeries in my life so far for, like, wisdom teeth and, you know, a few other things that you know, you don't think about them every day. It's like a cold. Once you have while you have a cold, it's terrible, it's awful, but once the cold is gone, you don't think about it anymore. But the mind likes to cause as much trouble and anxiety as possible as it goes through all of this. It's so funny. It's so funny. So the negative thinking, gonna try and reduce that as the current task, and also keep up these little videos here, little hellos to existence itself. Here it is, and yeah, I think it'll be fun. We'll see where this year goes. It's a couple hundred videos that might go out. I scroll on, you know, who doesn't scroll on the internets for hours, or an hour or two a day, watching little silly things. I could spend 10 minutes doing something and making a documentation for this thing. Yeah, and this is also part of the change. There's a lot of change going on today. Challenging myself to do something that you know, is probably, who knows where it's going to end up. You know, this is not something that I really, how interesting would it be to see, you know, 30 years from now, if this were to happen, or even 10 years, 5 years from now, like the things that are happening today, how they're going to go into the future, and looking back on history and seeing how the world's changed, how I've changed, how everyone has changed. But that's the fun part of life, isn't it? Is the change. That it's constant. The change is constant. It always seems to follow a pattern of how humanity goes through things, that children always play games, adults and civilization have always had struggles and difficulties and things to overcome, and, you know, this is the world. This is the world that we live in. We have hair that doesn't stay down properly, you know, all that good stuff. But, you know, that's what it is. We live in this thing that's just like, what is going on? You know, You're born into this life, and in life, we don't really get it why we showed up, uh, but we play along, isn't it? You know, just like shh, life's like shh, shh. I know it's weird. Just play along. Just have some troubles. Go figure. get some anxiety. Have some problems. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Right? Like this is life. It's so weird, but we are just playing along. We're playing along with the whole fun of it, and it's great. But anyway, all right, that's all I got for today. See you tomorrow.